Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when I find out that my good friend Jim Kimmel, hey friends, it's me, Jimmy, yippee! Imagine my surprise when I find out that my good friend Jim was once again emotional. Emotional? Jim? No, not my friend. Jim Kimmel never gets emotional. Unless, of course, we're talking about abortion. Obviously, Jim doesn't get emotional over the unborn children. What really gets Jim in his feelings over abortion is when states exercise their constitutional right to regulate it, and mothers are forced to make a traumatizing decision. Do I travel across state lines for my procedure, or do I choose one of the hundreds of methods that help prevent pregnancy? This is an issue that is important to Jim because it affects him personally. His biggest fear is living in a state without Planned Parenthood. But Jim also gets emotional when he hears about the Trumpers' draconian plan for illegal immigration. This is un-American! How dare this dictator deport people who forgot their papers? He's threatening to separate families. He's separating parents from children. Oh, the children! It's all about the children! Luckily, Jim has a good friend in Uncle KC who not only provided a masculine shoulder to cry on, Uncle KC also eased Jim's concerns when it comes to separated families. Good news, Jimmy! The Trumper, he has promised that families will not be separated. If mommy and daddy happen to forget their papers and their children are with them, along with their 2.5 pets, the Trumper, he has promised to keep the family together by safely returning everyone home. It'll be like a family exodus. The non-binary family dogs, they and them, they will be included in the exodus. After all, we are living in the era of inclusion. We wouldn't want anyone to be excluded from the journey. Last night, Jim Kimmel made his immaculate return to ABC. Well, KC, I didn't know he left. Where'd he go? Yeah, I didn't realize that Jim was on sabbatical either. Judging by his ratings, neither did anyone else. But all kidding aside, I know I am giving Jim Kimmel a hard time about being emotional, and in most cases, it is completely warranted. But last night, I understood why Jimmy Kimmel was emotional. If I were in his situation, I would probably be emotional too. Apparently, Jim Kimmel Live, which is a strange name for a show that's taped, Jim Kimmel Live was canceled last week due to the wildfires in California. During the show last night, Jim shared footage that was filmed outside of his studio in Hollywood where you could literally see the fire coming. I have been to Jim's studio before, which is located in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard. Like many areas in Los Angeles, it's surrounded by hills, and you could see the fire on the hills from the outside of his studio. It was that close, so producing a painfully boring show that most people aren't watching, that was the last thing on Jim Kimmel's mind last week, and rightfully so. I'm sure he is taking care of his staff, some of which lost their homes. I know I joke around about Jim Kimmel a lot here on the channel, but I don't think he's a bad dude. I think he's a good guy. There's not a doubt in my mind that he is helping people financially. Wouldn't surprise me either if he demands that that's kept private. But he opened the show last night with a 15-minute monologue that was understandably emotional. 14 out of 15 minutes. Jim Kimmel, he was pretty good, but he couldn't help it. He just couldn't help himself. For about 60 seconds, Jim Kimmel just could not prevent the symptoms of stage 4 OMB, Orange Bad, from taking over. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel in the description below. This morning on the second channel, we talked about the horrific opening weekend of the NFL playoffs. If you guys have a topic that you want me to cover on the second channel or even here on the main channel, shoot me an email, btlkc84@gmail.com. September 18th, 2001, 1 week after 9/11, the late night shows, they returned to their regular schedule. During his opening monologue, Jay Leno was obviously a hell of a lot more serious than he usually would be during his opening, similar to how Jim Kimmel was more serious last night than he usually is. Jay Leno, he honored the first responders, he honored those who lost their lives, but during the middle of his monologue, Jay Leno talked about being conflicted. He mentioned that people tune into late night shows to be entertained. They tuned in to laugh, they tuned in to escape reality. It was almost like Jay Leno was conflicted. Do I keep a more serious tone, or do I give people what they're tuning in for, which is to be entertained? Me personally, I prefer the second option, which is why I keep this show lighthearted. The way I see it, there are plenty of places that you can get serious news, and you can get it from people who are a hell of a lot smarter than I am. I'm here to give you the news in a way that's not as serious, so you can escape reality for a little while. I am mindless television. But I understand why the decision is difficult, and I understand why Jim Kimmel took a more serious tone last night. But like I said, he just couldn't help himself. For a brief moment, the symptoms of stage 4 OMB resurfaced, and Jim Kimmel, he found a unique way to make the LA fires all about the Trumper. And the thing is, it took all of 90 seconds for the Trumper to be mentioned. Like I told you guys last week, there's been a lot of blame going around, mainly dealing with the government response to the fires. Gabby Newsom, the wannabe dictator of the People's Republic of California, Gabby has been heavily criticized for the lack of access to water, or as the scientist in the biology department at Woke U would call it, H2O. Many people, Gabby Newsom included, can't figure out why water is a scarce resource in the People's Republic, especially considering the fact that Los Angeles is just a few miles away from the largest body of water on Earth, the Pacific Ocean. It would be like people in the desert complaining about a lack of sand, or an Eskimo complaining about an ice shortage. There's also been a lot of blame when it comes to the hiring practices for the fire department in Los Angeles. The city might be burning. There might only be one A in LA, but that A, it turns into an A+ when it comes to diversity. Residents of Los Angeles, they can take solace in the fact that their fire department is very diverse. They even have a diversity chief making $300,000 a year. Christine Larson is the diversity chief in Los Angeles. I guess Christine is responsible for making sure there's an equal amount of men and women hired. Recently, when asked how a woman would be strong enough to carry a man out of something like a burning building, Christine replied by saying, "He got himself in the wrong place if I had to carry him out of a fire." Yeah, no shit. The point is, though, even though the situation in Southern California is tragic, there are valid reasons to question and even criticize the government response. Not according to Jim Kimmel, though. No! This is not a time for criticism. This is not a time for questions. This is a time for love and understanding. And who does Jim blame for this onslaught of criticism towards Gabby Newsom and the LA Fire Department? Watch for yourself.
Once again, we see our fellow men and women coming together to support each other. People who lost their own homes were out volunteering in parking lots, helping others who lost theirs. I don't want to get into all the vile and irresponsible and stupid things our alleged future president and his gaggle of scumbags chose to say during our darkest and most terrifying hour. The fact that they chose to attack our firefighters, who apparently aren't white enough to be out there risking their lives on our behalf, it's disgusting, but it's not surprising. Instead, I want to focus on thanking those men and women.
Asking legitimate questions is not attacking. Asking how a 110-pound, 120-pound woman can carry a 220-pound man out of a building, That is not an attack on the woman. I haven't seen anyone criticizing the men and women who are risking their lives to save others. What I have seen is criticism of the hiring practices. What I have seen is criticism of Gabby Newsom and the mayor of Los Angeles. We were 2, maybe 3 days into the fire. The mayor was on a sabbatical. I can't remember where she was. Maybe she borrowed Bob Griner's timeshare and took a vacation in Mother Russia. I don't know. What I do know is she wasn't in Los Angeles. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Ron DeSantis was on vacation during a major hurricane? Remember a few years ago when Ted Cruz flew down to Mexico or something like that with his daughter? I can't remember what was happening in Congress, but Ted Cruz, he missed it to fly his daughter down to Mexico. The woke media destroyed him. They were relentless. I guarantee you, if there were major problems in Florida during a hurricane, Jim Kimmel, he would be making jokes about Ron DeSantis. I guarantee it. But when the tables are turned, Jim wants to play the victim. It's another classic case of media hypocrisy. Anytime there's a hurricane, they blame climate change. If a hurricane hits Texas, they'll blame Chevron for painfully drilling into Mother Earth until she bleeds oil. They'll blame residents of Texas for driving those dangerous trucks. But when a fire happens in Jim's neighborhood and someone has the audacity to ask, where in the hell are the men? How come all these firefighters are women? Why do they need a forklift to carry the hose? If someone has the audacity to ask questions, Jim Kimmel wants to call them grotesque. You know, I hope Californians wake up. There are a lot of good people in California. I hope they wake up. Even though politicians have minimal impact on our day-to-day lives, they can have a major impact when it comes to natural disasters. Hell, a lot of politicians, they are experts when it comes to man-made disasters. But when there is an emergency, you want people in government that know what the hell they're doing. Florida had a major hurricane last year. Look at the response and compare that response to what we are seeing in California. Give me your thoughts on this. Jim Kimmel returns to television and delivers an emotional monologue. 90 seconds into it, his symptoms of OMB take over. What is your personal preference as to how entertainment shows should handle situations like this? Should they take a more serious tone, or should they be looking to give people an escape? I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer, but you tell me. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.